So what do you see about those projects, and how you think linking the BCBS or CCAR initiatives of governance with projects? Do you see those things happening, and how do you see the value?
The projects to implement CCAR and BCBS? They're programs with several projects in them. It's hard to underestimate the complexity. For the banks that have been filing CCAR for some years now, the larger banks, it's more down to a process, but there's still a lot of business as usual, BAU design and efficiency opportunities. Data governance being one of those significant areas of opportunity to actually create that sustainable process rather than having to rely on Excel, PowerPoints, and emails. Outside of that, the projects are ongoing, and I think when you combine with that the regulators' expectations keep it increasing. So I think they would say, what they do say is, they don't yet consider that the industry as a whole is at the standard they expect. And so the bar's going to continue to increase, and it's a forced curve for CCAR. There's not an absolute pass line, and most institutions that fail are failing for qualitative reasons, not the quantitative reasons. So it's not that there's not a debate about whether they have adequate capital. It's whether their processes are sufficient, that the number they calculate is sufficient, or their ability to create it timely is sufficient. So that's kind of the ongoing piece, and I think that's where for a new filer, it's a significant amount of process that has to be implemented with a bar that's now higher than it was for the original first filers. But there's a lot of lessons they can learn from people that have already been filing. But if you are an ongoing filer, then it's how do you manage the cost and the effort to keep improving your processes, but also hopefully start to be able to divert some resources back to the core business of running and managing the bank.
Mm-hmm. And I think another key point, like you just mentioned, Simon, that another key thing that Collibra enables is, as that bar is being raised every quarter and every year by regulators as far as what data is required for those reports, or what edit checks, or what's being applied to them, that's where Collibra also comes into play to make sure that you are managing that new data set or altering your processes or capabilities within the organization to generate that data and prove how you've generated that for those reports as well.
There are so many dimensions to CCAR. This is why it's so complex for an institution to implement. It touches data all across the bank. It touches all the processes. The change management processes are critical. One of the leading practices I recommend to clients is having a training program, because often when within an organization, the reason lineage is so complex and difficult is people usually know where the data comes from that they receive or that they use, and they know where they pass it off to, but they don't know any of the hops outside of that. And I think you have to be realistic about what the technology can achieve for you. So you can't automate a lot of that process of collating the end-to-end lineage of the data. You can automate some of the technical metadata lineage, but the challenge with that is prioritization. You end up with a lot of information that's not actually relevant or useful. And this is what a question earlier was about the balance between business and IT. This is why we see business becoming more and more involved and having to be engaged, and even wanting to be engaged, is because they understand the nuance and the context of data within that end-to-end, the data supply chain, and they're the ones that can advise on, this is the data I create, and talk to the report owner, the CCAR report owner or a risk report owner, and agree on the context of that data and how it's going to be used in a report. Because the same data element can be used in different ways in different reports, in the same way that what might look like the same line in a report has different data that goes into it based on the context of how it's interpreted. Mm-hmm. And the DGO 1.0 versus 2.0, often IT was making that interpretation and trying to understand that context, and that's one of the challenges that is overcome by having more business involvement.
So is that, as Simon mentioned, is very complex in nature of the implementations. Do you see the clients understanding that complexity that involved to execute this program?
I think usually when we talk to them, they understand that it's complex, and they maybe are not always realistic about how, sometimes they're still looking for that magical button, but yeah, there's a lot of education there to do as well, of course.
Yeah, I think they think it's really complex, and they think that they could resolve it within a month when it really isn't a month process to resolve these problems, or 2 months, whatever it might be.
And like Simon says, a lot is in that, the end user computing. I think we once talked about it, that you said that the regulator will start looking at that more as well. Because there's so many cases where a bank had to do a major adjustment because there was a formula wrong in Excel, right? So they have this whole architecture, which was like $100 million, but then at the end, it goes into an Excel and that person hands it off to the reporting team and so on. That's a very important aspect as well, I think. Because that's something you don't have that, right? You need to manually find out who does it in Excel and so on, which is also part of your lineage or your controls and so on.
So on the responsibility side, how do you think the organizations are matured in putting the operating model to run these programs? And
it's certainly mixed because of the different approaches. Around CCAR, a number of institutions have, and even for BCBS239, started with a centralized approach, trying to develop the standards and convert the principles and the questionnaire into capabilities. Because when you read the principles, they read great, but they don't actually tell you what you need to do. And that's by design. They don't want to give you a checklist. And so that someone in the organization needs to go through and convert those into, here are the capabilities we expect to see. So you can do your assessment, but also so you can do your roadmap of what will we look like when we are compliant. The beauty of them being principles is there's no one answer. So you can design a different state, short-term, longer-term, about how you're going to be compliant, even while you're doing the implementation of those different projects. So it's not unusual to find that on the architecture side, it's a multi-year plan of transformation, but doesn't mean that you can't implement some interim steps, interim controls in the existing environment to demonstrate compliance now while you build out the longer-term pieces of your project.
So how is the business user when it comes to our POCs? Do they see the value that they're going to get using Collibra?
I would say almost right away.
Yeah, I think so too.
If you go to, I've only seen a couple of cases up close, of course, where HR had just gone into the business and said, this is now part of your task list as well, because you're depending on the approach, you're a chief steward, for example, and those people are a VP of risk, for example, for market risk or liquidity risk. If they don't have a one-stop shop tool, then they just push back to even HR, which implements the program. Because it's a lot of responsibility, right? So you're responsibility for the roadmap, for the approach, and so on. So if you don't have anything to measure and to see where you are, and you need that tool. You need a one-stop tool. So they get it. Yeah.
With CCAR, I think that from the project perspective, you never just see it as solely an IT project, where you might see in other lines of business or in other verticals as well. Everything that I've seen around CCAR is the business is highly involved. And even in some cases, IT is almost less involved, of just validating that the architecture that the business wants to bring in is going to fit within the overall landscape of the company.